up here. Come on, up here. Thank you. Today, I want to talk about a problem that I've encountered countless times. You get 5, 10, maybe even 20 or 30,000 words into a manuscript, and stuff just isn't working. The plot isn't compelling, the characters seem flat, the setting that you thought was fresh and exciting is bland and dull. You might have a great idea for the ending, but getting through the middle is giving you some issues. Now, I wouldn't call this issue writer's block, although I suppose it would fit some people's definition of writer's block. It's more a case of where you have a path for the story in mind, but that path doesn't seem as engaging as you had hoped. Or maybe you have an ending in mind and just aren't sure how to get there in the most engaging and exciting way. If you've ever encountered this middle of the novel syndrome, your first instinct might be to give up, to move on to some other project. And I would strongly advise against doing that. Nearly any story can be saved, no matter how muddled it has become. So to help you overcome this, here are 3 things you can try to hopefully overcome these problems. I guess thing to try number 1, that'll work. Try switching up your viewpoint. Now this obviously only applies if you're writing in third limited and not omniscient or first person or second person, I suppose. Obviously, if you're in an omniscient viewpoint, you can't really switch up your viewpoint. And if you're writing first-person perspective, you're probably going to be bound by whatever character you've chosen to write from. Anyway, I realized a while ago that I don't give a lot of thought to which character's viewpoint I write a given scene from. I mean, sure, the character has to be in that scene, and they usually should be part of the main cast, but beyond those considerations, I never gave it much thought. And this can cause problems because the first viewpoint you pick to write a scene from might not be the correct one. Or maybe the bulk of your story was written from one character's viewpoint and it would be better if it was written from another. Switching or using more viewpoints will do a couple of things. First, it will add some variety to your story by allowing you to explore a different character's voice and thoughts. Second, it can provide some good perspective that you might not be getting without that viewpoint. This can be especially helpful if you have a character motivation that maybe isn't coming across correctly from that character's viewpoint, but when you observe it from another character, maybe it'll work. In the project that I'm working on now, I wrote a lot of viewpoints from one particular main character. Now, this made sense initially because they were a very interesting character and had a lot of interesting things going on, but through a confluence of character traits and just the flow of the story as a whole, it made their viewpoints not super interesting. About halfway through the latest draft, I started to have problems, and I decided instead to start writing some of the scenes from another character's viewpoint. Not only has this made the initial scenes more interesting, and it's better established the first character's motivation, but it's also given me an opportunity to explore a secondary character that I wouldn't otherwise have. And this exploration of that character has added a lot to the story. So if you've reached the middle of your story and things aren't working for you, spend some time viewing your look points. Spend some time looking at your viewpoints. If, however, after switching things up, you still feel like the scenes aren't great, then thing to try number 2, write a few bad scenes. There's a saying I heard a while ago, if you want to increase your rate of success, start by doubling your rate of failure. One of the issues with the middle of a story is that you are constrained. You're constrained by what you wrote in the beginning, and you're constrained by whatever you've planned for. Back up. Come on, back up. Go back up. Thank you. Sorry, I had to reset the cat. One of the issues with the middle is that you are constrained. You're constrained by what you wrote in the beginning, and you're constrained by whatever you've planned for your ending. This means that any scene in the middle can't stretch too far from what has happened and needs to fit in with what you want to happen. What I recommend you try if you're stuck in the middle is to write 3, maybe 4 scenes that are completely incongruent with the beginning and the ending of your story. Have off-the-wall things happen, have characters change in ways they really shouldn't, do something that breaks the plot. The The purpose of this is not to write scenes that will end up in the final product. Instead, it's about freeing your mind from the constraints that have been imposed while you're writing the middle. Once you free your brain from those constraints and you allow it to start working on the story, you may find some new ideas or approaches that weren't clear to you when you first began. You have to be careful with this, obviously, but you might even find an entirely new direction to take the story into, or you might create a few dialogue exchanges or descriptions that you can use elsewhere. This technique is really no different than doing free writes like you would when you're outlining or at the beginning of a story. It's just doing that while you already have the story partially written. Now, I want to emphasize the point here is not to make the scenes poorly written. When I say bad scenes, they are bad in the sense that they don't necessarily fit with the rest of the story as you've laid it out, or you plan to lay it out, if you plan to lay it out. You should still try and write the scenes well, use active voice, avoid excessive exposition, show don't tell, all that crap. Writing a few scenes without the constraint of ensuring they fit within the rest of the story might be enough to get you over the hump of finishing the middle. And hopefully coming out of that exercise, you'll have come up with some new ideas to try and keep the story going. Another approach is to not keep the story going. Thing to try number 3, try and write the ending. Don't hesitate at all, just write the ending. Now, this advice best applies when you have an ending already in mind and just aren't quite sure how to get there. But it could also work if you have no idea how to end the story and don't know what direction to take the middle because you don't know what direction you're taking the ending. Moving directly to the ending, however you've envisioned it, will hopefully accomplish a few things. First, it will give you a break from the drudgery of the middle and let you write some exciting climactic scenes that you've probably been itching to write. Second, it will hopefully identify holes in your story that need to be filled before the ending makes sense. If your hero needs to confront the villain at his hideout, then they need to travel to the villain's hideout. If your protagonist needs to rescue their love interest from a sinking ship, then they need to be on a ship, and the ship needs to be sinking. Working through writing the ending and having the ending down on paper could potentially give you a list of things that you need to accomplish in the middle of the story. You will also maybe come up with some ideas for things that you can foreshadow, or maybe a twist that you can set up earlier on in the book. The idea here is to just write the ending and hopefully generate some ideas that will help you with the middle. Now, as you can probably guess, if you're only 1,000 or so words into the novel, it's probably a good idea to tough it out a little bit longer before you start writing the ending. But if you've reached, the low point in the middle of 30 to 40,000 words and you're really stuck, going right to the ending might be helpful. Hey, come back. There are like 3 sentences left in the script. Can you not stay there till the end? I guess all that to say that writing the ending can be a good way to figure out your middle. So don't be afraid to rush to the ending, like I'm about to do. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. I've recently gotten significantly better at keeping the cat up there for videos, but as you saw today, it takes some effort. I post new videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.